everybody. Here we are with another Access Online video. Alpena Public Schools are still on pause for in-person learning. And I'm sure most of you know that though, because most of you go to school there. And I'm also sure that you have already grown a bit sick of working through your take-home packets or attending your virtual classes depending on the choice that you made. And if it was the latter, I am also pretty sure that you aren't going to be completely thrilled about the news of another one of these virtual videos. But here we are. And because we are here, let's try to make the best of it. It looks like school is hopefully going back to in-person next week, which means that we will be too. But in the meantime, we're going to continue on with our lesson series that we titled Anthem. So stick with us here just a bit longer because the end is in sight. And if you know somebody in your small group who maybe hasn't heard the news that a new Access Online video is up, make sure that you message them and let them know so that we all can continue to grow closer to Christ together. But that's enough of that. Here is the next video, which is technically Access Online week 38. Let's start now. Have you ever been to a concert before? Have you ever been to a concert? And I'm not talking about the ones that your school might put on if you are in choir or something like that, but I'm talking about a concert put on by one of your favorite bands, or one that is just packed full of people excited to be there. And if so, did the singer of your favorite band ever stop and turn the microphone to the crowd and prompt you all to sing a part of one of his songs for him? And if so, did it respond by singing out the lyrics to that song in a chorus of off-tune but charged up excitement? There is just something about being in a room full of people or out in a field full of people who have similar interests in music, and it's special to hear when everyone just sings along with the lyrics to a song that you know and that you are excited about. And we can sing by ourselves in a car, and we can sing by ourselves in a shower or something like that, right? But it's extra cool when we are able to be a part of a group that just is out there singing together in community. In fact, there are a lot of things that most of us would prefer not doing alone, right? And it isn't because we couldn't enjoy these things alone, but it's just more fun to do certain things with friends. Think about how different riding a roller coaster would be by yourself. Or think about how going to dinner at a fine dining restaurant would be if you were at a table all alone. Or what if you took a trip to Hawaii by yourself, or went downstate to the 12 Oaks Mall by yourself? Or those things they are great, and I'm sure we would enjoy them by ourselves, but they'd be better with friends there next to us, enjoying them right along with us. There is something special about doing stuff as a group. There's something special about singing along with the crowds at a concert, especially one put on by your favorite band. And very much related to this, there is something special about singing in worship, surrounded by a group of God's people. For the past few weeks, we have been looking at the book of Psalms in order to study both how and why we should worship God in this series that we've titled Anthem. And in the first week, we talked about how all of creation worships God and that we should follow suit. We followed that up with a discussion about how we should worship to remember all of the things that God has done for us, and singing songs can help us remember. Then last week, we had that video about lament psalms and the songs in the book of Psalms that could help us process tough emotions. And we did so to remind ourselves to worship even when it is difficult to do so, because when we do, we can properly recognize the hope that we have even in the midst of times of heartache. And today, we are finishing up this conversation, and you've likely guessed the topic already. We are going to be talking about why it is so important to worship as a community, together as God's family. And again, it isn't like we couldn't worship by ourselves, but there is something about doing so with others that is a bit more powerful. We can worship songs, or we can sing worship songs in our car, and I guess we can sing worship songs in the shower if we're kind of weird, or we could pray by ourselves, or we could even read scripture by ourselves. But just like it is with riding a roller coaster with a friend or enjoying fine dining with a friend, it's just better to do all of this together. There really is something special about worshiping our God surrounded by a group of like-minded people, and let me explain why that is. In the Bible, the book of Psalms is filled with songs specifically written to be sung by a whole community of people worshiping together. In fact, just about every psalm was written with this in mind. Spotify and Pandora and car radios, they really weren't a thing back 3,000 years ago. And while I'm sure that songs probably would have gotten stuck in the heads of ancient Israelites, which would then prompt them to sing or to at least hum the tune while they were by themselves, most singing even back then happened in groups. Most psalms were written for groups, and they were meant to be sung as a group. Psalm 92, for example, is titled A Song for the Sabbath. And it was meant to be sung by an Israelite community on the Sabbath day, the day of their worship, in order to help all singing respond appropriately to the works of the Lord. And here is just a snippet of it. So this is Psalm 92, verses 1 through 4. It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your steadfast love in the morning and your faithfulness by night, to the music of the lute and the harp, to the melodies of the lyre. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the works of your hands I sing for joy. In this psalm, God's people were prompted to remember together the Lord's love for them and his faithfulness to them. And they sang these lyrics, and as they sang these lyrics, their many voices would amplify this praise, and it would unite them closer together as a community formed to praise the Creator. And in Psalm 66, Psalm 66 is similar. In 66, 1 through 5, it says this: Shout for joy to God, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Give to him glorious praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. So great is your power that your enemies come cringing to you. All the earth worships you and sings praises to you. They sing praises to your name. Come and see what God has done. He is awesome in his deeds toward the children of man. So this one starts off with a line about how the entire earth should collectively praise God. And it continues on by listing a few reasons why that is. But the chorus that this song repeats over and over is, come and see what the Lord has done. It is an invitation for others to join in the singing. It's an invitation to worship as a group. A few years ago, in 2019, This sort of odd movie came out called Yesterday. Have you ever heard of it? If not, the premise was this, and spoiler alert, by the way, if you do plan to watch it. But in this movie, a young musician named Jack discovers that the entire world had forgotten about the band The Beatles. Nobody knows who the Beatles are. Nobody has ever heard a Beatles song, and all traces of their music, both digitally and physically, have somehow mysteriously disappeared from the earth. So, taking advantage of this, Jack, he begins to sing and perform famous Beatles songs like they're his own songs. And people love them. And eventually, Jack becomes famous for singing these songs that aren't really his own, except that everybody in the world thinks that they are. But then as the movie progresses, Jack, he discovers that this isn't exactly true. There are people who remember the Beatles. There are people who know these songs, and there are people who know that Jack isn't the original author of them, but that he's poaching from the once famous band. But the weird thing is that they don't really care. These people are just excited to hear their favorite music again, and they're thrilled that there's somebody else who remembers too, who has the musical talent to perform them like they once were performed. They were excited to experience a connection that they thought was lost. And again, Yesterday is a pretty weird movie. But if you have ever seen it, you would know how important it was for the main character to find that community who knew and who understood his passion for the Beatles and vice versa. And it's sort of similar for us too, right? It's so important for us to have a community of people who remember and share a love for the language and stories of not the Beatles, but of God. It's important to feel like and to be a part of something bigger than just ourselves. Worship, it connects us. It allows us to remember that we are not alone. And it reminds us of how big God's family really is. And more importantly, it reminds us of the responsibility we have been given to care for one another, to care for God's family. It is kind of ironic, though, that I am teaching a lesson like this through a video screen. And if you're watching this, there's a high chance that either you're the only one viewing it or you've got just your immediate family watching next to you. And in fact, our original plan for this final lesson was to intentionally point out some of the things that I've talked about during that time in Axis, where we all get together to sing songs after we eat. Ben and Tony would have led us in worship, and we all would have been there in our chairs, physically singing as one voice to the God that we serve. So again, it does feel sort of odd to emphasize group worship in a time when we aren't physically meeting as a group. But if we've learned anything from this past year or so, it's that the church isn't just a church building. And Access isn't just the basement of our church building or the organized events that we sometimes get to do. And we can be the church. We can be God's people in a variety of ways, just like we can worship in a variety of ways too. Watching this video is one way to do so. And taking seriously my challenge to text your small group friends to remind them to do similar is worshiping in community. And speaking of small groups, staying connected to yours in other ways is also important, especially now. I'm still sending out those discussion questions to your small group leader and to just a general blanket email. So you have the option still to meet together virtually or chat about these things virtually, or at least through different means of digital messaging. And you could also message your Access friends your prayer requests. And all of you could commit to praying for specific things for each other during this time. And hopefully soon, and maybe even as early as next Wednesday, we will be able to be physically together singing songs and doing other types of worship as well. But don't forget that you can get creative with all of this in the meantime. From the book of Psalms to the early church to even the present day, God's people have always come together to worship in community. And sometimes that does mean a virtual one. But how will you commit to continuing this? How will you attempt to connect to your fellow believers even this week? Because remember, we worship together because we are God's family. And healthy families, they make sure to stick together no matter the circumstances.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. My failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. Called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Needed rescue, my sin was heavy, chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, when you called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day.